Very first question is our offering or what we sacrifice unto God. So we're looking at sacrificing things, we'll give things to God, spiritual sacrifices in our case. Is that the most important thing in our religious activity before God? What we give. Is that true when we look at chapter 5 and verse 1? Let's read it together. Keep thy foot. Some of your versions may idea of keep your feet. Well, 1 foot at a time. That foot, you pay attention. Keep thy foot when thou goest into the house of God. For to draw nigh to hear is better than to give sacrifice of fools. For they know not what they do is evil. They don't realize that's evil. I hadn't sacrificed anything. I just walked in. You just walked in. And we haven't offered any sacrifices, but that's going to be the thing. Like today, we're going to sing and we're going to pray. We're going to take the Lord's Supper. We're going to sing praise to God as our sacrifice. But if we're not careful, we'll come in the presence and say, see what I've done. To obey is better than sacrifice. Are we listening to God? Are we reverencing God? And that is something that I think you and I have to just remind ourselves every time we come to worship. Doesn't mean we don't talk to people and we visit and all that, but when the time comes for our worship to begin, we become quiet, don't we? We get ready, we become alert, and that is a good thing. But why are we doing that? To please the teacher so he can talk? But we're here to do what? Hear God. Hear God. And that's what we're doing. These people in Solomon's day were not doing that. And so we're going to realize that this becomes, as we just enter into the sanctuary, and there's a lot of things going to be happening in the temple as we put ourselves back in that time. But the idea of just coming to the temples and you do that over and over and over again, it becomes something that you're not real careful about of what it's all about. That's the presence of God. And we're there to listen and not tell him, look at what I'm doing for you. And I'm not saying that's your attitude, but that becomes that if we don't even think about who's in our presence in a special way today. God sees us all the time. We're never hiding from him. But we're here to worship God. You came early to study God's word with us, and that's a good thing. But that's not important as idea when you come here for the attitude and the purpose. I'm here to listen. I'm here to learn so I can be a better servant of thine. Any thoughts upon that idea? So what kind of sacrifice are you offering? Is it the right sacrifice? Remember the Jews, they had to have the right sacrifice. Various offerings were different. They were specified of what they need to be, whether animal or meal offering, that sort of thing. And here is a context where I think the second question will help us understand it more. What thought or attitude, that's what we're looking at question 1, what thought or attitude caused our words to be few? Is it not this reverence for God and we don't even realize maybe we're doing evil because we've come to the temple and we're offering the sacrifices? So he says it's better to draw nigh to hear it better than to give sacrifice of fools, for they know not that they do evil. Be not rash to thy mouth, and let not thy heart be hasty to utter anything before God. For God is in heaven, thou upon the earth. Therefore let what? Words be few. What thought and attitude could cause our words to be few? We're in the presence of God, and where is he? Now we're in his temple. That's his divine presence, and that we come to listen to him. But where is he compared to where we are? He's in heaven. He's God. You're not. I'm not. And we are here upon the earth. They're upon the earth. Therefore, reverence. Let thy words be few. What was the problem with Jesus in his day? as we fast forward, and we read in Matthew the 6th chapter, let's talk about the sacrifice of prayer. What are the people doing? David? Paul prayed 3 times to let the thorn be removed from him. Was he being repetitious? He said it 3 times.
But pray, don't keep imploring things, but in the same prayer, just keep saying the same thing over and over again. Jesus said, that the Gentiles do that.
Yes, and let's just note the context. They like to stand in the synagogues and the corners for their prayer, for them to be heard among men. And so they would make vain repetitions. They thought by their much repeating things they would be heard because they loved the glory of men, and they made a lot of vain repetitions in the sense that it really wasn't the purpose of imploring God to do something. Do you say the same prayer all the time? I remember my father-in-law became a Christian. He said the same prayer. It's all he knew at the dinner table. He just became a Christian. And it's a thought and the attitude, and that's why Jesus says, if your attitude was right about prayer, you could pray in your closet, couldn't you? And God would do what? He would hear you. You don't have to be standing before men in the synagogues. You don't have to make vain repetitions. He knows what you need before you ask. And my point about Paul is that he implores that. It didn't come about, should I keep on coming? Because God says, ask, and you shall receive. You keep knocking on that door. And that's what Paul did. It wasn't the idea that, God, I'm going to inform you, and apparently you're not listening, and you don't know. I know what you need before you have it. What does that say about God's use of prayer and idea? It's do we have faith? Are we going to keep having trust in Him that He can deliver? And what does Paul learn after his repetitious asking for the blessing? My grace is sufficient for thee. When you're weak, I'm strong. Case closed. Paul's attitude was not like we see in Matthew the 6th chapter with those vain repetitions. And that becomes important. So God's in heaven, and we're learning. He knows what I need. By faith, we need to keep asking Him. We can do that, and we can say the same thing over and over again. But to be heard and by many words, God will be impressed and finally give in. He does what? It doesn't, not that way at all. He knows what you need, so He doesn't have to have this flowery language, which a lot of times I was in a funeral, and I know people, as they get older, they will write their prayers at funerals. It's an emotional time, and I understand that. But it was so flowery in the sense that he worked on that. And I said, and I don't judge motives, but it just amazed me. It wasn't what someone would say, I'm praying from my heart today. He was a literary genius, and he wanted people to know that's the impression I got. But I realized that's not the purpose of prayer. It's not impressing men and wow, what a prayer. It's that, hey, brother, you express what's on my heart today. Thank you. You led us in prayer, and I could pray with you. I could say amen to that, because that was what was in my heart and what is what we need, and so forth. But it's not, God doesn't hear unless I talk a lot, and or He's impressed with my sacrifices when I didn't really come to hear. I came to show off, or I came to be seen. There's our attitudes. So when people say, well, attitude's what's important, it is. What we sacrifice is important. Why can't they come together? And what we're offering to God is, God, you deserve this. You deserve this. And I thank you for all that you've done for me. And have that I'm here to listen to your word. I didn't create this word. I don't think like this. I think what you're warning about is sometimes I could be falling into that trap. Have the humility to listen. And that becomes a very important thing with our relationship with God. I think it's always a good thought when we're coming to worship, prepare our hearts for what we're about to do when we set our foot in these doors. This is not what makes things holy. This is where the holy people gather. And that becomes very, very important. Any comments you want to add to that? Okay. Question number 3. When we make a vow before God, what must we do? And then, with that said, are there any exceptions that we see here?
You should honor a vow, but you think of the marriage question. You vow to live with them forever. But God gave you an exception, so therefore that vow would not be honored.
That'd be an example of that. That's true. So let's just see what the vow is. Vow is, here's the rule. Here's what and this is what God demands. When he says, be not rash with thy mouth, and let not thy heart be hasty to utter anything before God. We have that. For a dream cometh with a multitude of business, and a fool's voice with a multitude of words. When thou vowest a vow unto God, defer not to pay it. Why, God? For he hath no pleasure in fools. Pay that which thou vowest. So if I'm just being rash with my vow, not thinking, what did that saddle me with? It was just a good thing to say at the time. Maybe I had good intentions, and I'm rash. I don't think it through. He said, when it comes to oaths and vows, because what are you doing with a vow and an oath, a solemn oath? As God is my witness, I will do this. God is being brought in to your promises. So in the New Testament, he's not saying you can't, do you swear to tell the whole truth, nothing but truth, so help you God? I can say yes. Well, don't swear at all. Well, you go in the context. To swear at all is not by this or that. Thank you. Well, I'll swear by the temple. I'll swear by heaven. I didn't call God. I didn't put God in there. So let your yea be yea and your nay be nay. We understand all the context of those and realize what is being sought forth. People thought they could pray, they could vow something and with something out here and not have to pay it if they didn't get to do it. They didn't want to do it. And that's the vow of fools. Jephthah had to hate his hasty vow, whether it was to kill his daughter or commit her that she would remain a virgin. Different views about that. But it was serious. It had to be paid. First thing comes out of the house, I'll offer it unto thee. And so we have an example why you better think through what you promise. And our yea is to be yea. And we might not say, as God is my witness, well, I'll do this. I said, I'll do this. I'll do that. And realize I'm going to do that as long as I have the physical ability to do so. And are we that sober-minded about our promises? We just make them rashly and so forth. So there's really no exceptions here other than you're a fool if you don't pay that. But as Norris has said, that when we talk about that vow, there are exceptions, right? I can put away my wife. A wife can put away her husband for only one reason. What is that? Fornication. That's a very broad term of any sexual relationship that's not according to God, whether that be homosexuality or ideal. But you commit adultery when you're already married. That's true specifically. But the fornication was there because people could be committing all sorts of sexual acts and intercourse with others, and it covered that. And so what we see is that that's the exception to that. Now, do we have an exception to the vows? Norris brought in the vows, but let's talk about other vows that we make that's not there. We have an exception to that. In the Old Testament, do we have any exception to that rule of oaths? We know right here's no exceptions, but do we have it in the Old Testament? She's released from it, isn't it? Okay, and we find that Numbers 30. If you turn over there with me, I think I wrote a bulletin article, so I think I can summarize this pretty well. But this is a point that needs to be made when we think about our oaths, that yes, there were exceptions. And in chapter 30, you'll look at a father with a daughter still in the home, under his roof, under his care, and leading her in the way of righteousness. You also have the husband, as Danny sets forth, that he's the head of his house, and it's the rule of his house. To show the seriousness of this oath, even when the husband hears the rash vow of his wife, and he speaks up and said, no, we're not going to do that. Her rashness is recognized. Look at chapter 30 and verse 12. If her husband made them null and void in the day that he heard them, then whatsoever proceedeth out of her lips concerning her vows or concerning the bond of her soul shall not stand. Her husband hath made them void. Jehovah will do what? Forgive her. You bound your soul. And the forgive can be let loose. I understand that. But the sense is that it was serious. It is how I'll forgive her. God will forgive her. And that becomes important. Let's say that the husband hears the rash vow, says nothing. Well, that means he permits it. No, he just says nothing. He just confirms the oath is going to stand. But what happens if he doesn't step in as the head of his household? He doesn't step in and he is involved in letting it go, and all of a sudden he says, oh, we're going to make that void. He delays it. What then? If he shall make them null and void after that he hath heard them, then he shall bear what? Bear her iniquity? Why? Because he didn't correct it, leading in his home. He heard it day after day. He didn't establish in the day he heard it. Day after day takes place, and that's the context. And it just hit me, how would I be, I'm nullifying, it's a rash vow, and how come I'm going to bear her iniquity? Is because she's bound herself to that and she might not follow through. She's made a rash vow. I will forgive her if you spoke up, but he speaks up. What does that tell you about the timing of our leadership in the home? About the timing of our leadership as fathers? Let it go, let it go, let it go. Being patient. Oh, that's a patient husband. When you see the sin and you just put it off, involved in doing that. And to me, this chapter, why does he speak about fathers and husbands? Was not to give you an example that silence is permissive. That's how this passage is being used. Brethren today are saying, well, here's a problem. You know, you talk about silence never being permissive. It never authorizes anything. Well, it sure was here. I hope you're prepared for that. And understand that this is an exception to the rule of oaths, not an exception to the rule of permission and silence. People are trying to have a new hermeneutic of trying to, how we're going to interpret the Bible, and they use this. Just remember that what he's doing here is not setting something from silence as being okay. It's what's spoken. He's just confirming it with his silence. He's not permitting something brand new that hasn't been spoken. And that's a clever way of trying to use the Bible that way. There are no exceptions to the rule of silence. Silence does never authorizes anything. And we can go through the Bible and do that. But see what's happening. What did his silence do? It must have permitted it. It must have permitted it. Well, yeah, it permitted it, but some of your versions will have, it shall stand, it shall stand, it shall stand. You confirmed it. I think New King James was talking about, he confirmed it. Confirm silence? How do you confirm silence? What was it? Well, it was an oath. It doesn't change the law of silence. And it is an exception not to the rule of silence, which is never permissive. It's an exception to the rule of oaths. And what this deal is really highlighting, fathers, when children are being rash, you discipline in a timely fashion. In this way, I'm speaking up. You're not going to make that vow in my house. Husbands do the same thing, because when they hear it day by day and they do not act in a timely fashion, you will bear their iniquity. That's what he said. She's the one that sinned. Yeah. But just like a watchman that stays silent and doesn't speak out against the error that's being set forth, you will bear, blood will be upon your hands. So what is that enjoining us to do? When we lead our homes, we're not dictators and these are our servants and all of this sort of thing. That's my daughter, that's my wife. I hear what comes out of her mouth. And you speak up when you say, do you know what you're promising here? You know you have to fulfill that. And on that day that you hear that of, there was an exception to the oaths that she was now not having to fulfill that oath. And God will forgive her, let her loose from that. Any comments on that? Questions? Yes, sir? David, I understand that. I'm slow to say, because I know the Bereans, they search the scriptures daily to see if things were so. And we have accepted the hermeneutic that we are authorized by command, example, and necessary inference. And that's being challenged. Bring it on. Bring it on. That's how we would look at anything that's written. Does he command it? Well, I need to do that in the same context. That is an example which we follow. What's the example that we take the Lord's Supper on the first day of the week? What would be, we have an example of that? Acts 27, and we wouldn't know what day of the week to take it on if we didn't have an example. Is that example kind of instructive? And we know that's right, because the brethren in Troas, they met on the first day of the week to break bread, to take the Lord's Supper. Every week has a first day, necessarily inferred. And you begin to realize, what can I do that I know is authorized by God? We sing, we pray. What about giving? When do we give? First day of the week. We lay by in store so no collection be made when Paul came. So we have a treasury. That's the Lord's money. We know how the Lord's money was to be used. And you have authority for everything you do? Yes. We just shouldn't do it. What about psalm books? Where's the specific authority for that? Well, we don't have specific, use these psalm books, but that's an aid to carry out the command. It's not anything different. It's not anything added. It's to carry out the command to sing. The building is here to carry out of meeting. We can meet under the tree. We've got growing trees. We could maybe work together that way, but it's not that way. It's not commanded. These are connected with other commands that we have, and it doesn't bring something new to it. It is indeed assisting that. So we reason from that, but if people want to challenge that, that's fine. But this chapter, to say this is a exception to the rule of silence. It's perversion. I'm with you on that. And whether they were looking for a loophole or not, it's we come back to the Word and realize what was being said and what wasn't. Jimmy?
No, your first 3 points there make me think of Ananias Sapphira.
Yeah, well, how? They died?
Well, they came before God, they made a physical offering, and they made a statement, they spoke, and it was not a good thing that they done.
That's right.
And they got an immediate answer.
Immediately, didn't they? Right.
Another point on the loophole is this: Jesus commented about the Pharisees saying that about their oaths, you would swear by the temple, but the gold, if you swore by the gold of the temple.
There's your loopholes that David's talking about. And people look for that. Judge not that you be not judged. Isn't that kind of a loophole that we try to hit? So that point's well taken. I'd also want to just realize if we just act that to everybody, and Dave's not doing that, I just wanted to emphasize, hey, this can be challenged because what it does, when we examine the truth and we see what is there, it makes us stronger in the faith. It makes us stronger against perversions of the Scripture. That's part of what Peter talks in 2 Peter, the 3rd chapter, that we grow in grace and knowledge. And it's in the context of false teaching. And when something is challenged, if we have an open heart, I could be wrong, then we go to the Scriptures and realize, well, what is consistent with God's law? And back to this one, you look at Ecclesiastes, it would be a foolish thing to not pay your oaths. It would be something a fool would do. And yet, we have exceptions to oath-taking, even in the Old Testament, when everyone needed to swear by Jehovah, as Jeremiah said, because we realize he is the witness of all that we do. Okay, enough said about that. So let's, we made our vow exceptions. Number 4, what should cause us to not wring our hands in despair when we see injustice occurring in high places? We see it happening. Do we see injustice happening? Right now there's about 11 people, I think, getting ready to maybe go to jail for 11 years because they prayed and they were singing in an abortion clinic. And we got laws on the book. You're not supposed to cause people not to enter into abortion clinics so they want to have an abortion. These people were not keeping that from happening. They were praying and they were singing and they were there inside that place. And the laws of the land are there. So we said, well, that's not fair. And more things that we hold true as Christians, we may be jailed with that. It's not new, is it, Paul? And in the Christian's word. So when those times of injustice are there, what is the wise man here in Ecclesiastes, Solomon? What does he say we shouldn't wring our hands in despair? God would tell, verse 8, God's there. And we've already seen in chapter 3, there's the judgment. He will judge all, and they're not going to escape that at all. And so we should realize that he's going to be there to take judge of those things. Question 5. Who should not be concerning themselves or be concerned over what occurs on farms? Any of you work on a farm? Did you live on a farm? Things have changed. We go to urban areas, and now people are wanting to go back to the rural areas. They want to get out of the big cities because of all the problems. But do you go there to do farming? No. You just got to wait. I'll work from home with those things. Why is farming important? Well, why is farming important to HEB? Yeah, we ain't going to have any food if they don't get any food. And also, well, you better have to grow it in your yard. And that's the point that he's making here about kings. Verse 9, moreover, the profit of the earth is for all. The king himself is served by the what? Where does he get his food? He just flies in from outer space, whatever. The king. What do we have in common? We have to have food in order to live. Every one of us. Do any of us, are we growing our own food right now? Well, I grow what I like to eat. Okay. What if you had to grow your own things? That's what people did on the farm. They had animals, had stock, they had all the grain they needed, what they needed to survive. They lived that way. And their life surrounded those things. It was very difficult times, but they were self-sufficient. In a sense, they had to be that way as they were living in rural areas. And people, there's some that still do that. What have we learned about foreign countries? If they want to control us, what do? China's buying up farmland. They're getting close to places where we have our military. What would they like to do? They would like, if you control the food, you control the people. It's not difficult to understand, but we don't think about that because, well, I'll always have HEB. If I don't get them, I got Kroger. But I like Aldi's a little bit better. We're all going to be okay. Where do they all get their food? From the sea, from the field, even kings get that. Okay? Any comments about that? Or you got a new place to get food? Yeah, we go to restaurants. Where do they get their food? I see these trucks come in here and they bring their vegetables and their fruit and to people that are going to then put it in little nice things and they'll give it to you on special holidays and all that. Where is the chain go back to? And that's why it's important for to realize that the field gets back to essential while it's important. And he just throws that in there that here kings may be involved in being unjust and all that, but you know what? They have to eat like you do. And it's going to be the field, and here you are doing work that may be in the field that is important as kings. All right, now question number 6. I put it here, you're going to help me. You're going to instruct me in something because you're going to learn these principles. I may believe that being rich is the greatest goal of life. So they want to, well, maybe not get rich, I just want to have enough to be comfortable. And we see, well, if you're going to go there, say it's the greatest goal of life, what points can you offer to help me see that such a goal is foolish? It's not foolish to have enough to live. We pray for our daily bread. We have to work for that. If we were a day laborer, like many were in New Testament times. But what would be the first thing you could say to me? If that's the goal, you want to be rich, what do I need to be aware of? David? It's pretty self-explanatory, isn't it? You mean to tell me that the more money I get, I won't make me happy necessarily? Because why? I won't be satisfied. Is that true, or is that just something in Solomon's day? Do you see that with people? They make millions, and they say, well, I want to be the first billionaire, multi-billionaire. I got more money than you do. And there's competition, all those things. Why weren't you satisfied? And we may set out that way, and then all of a sudden we get that. But that is very true. Will not be satisfied with riches. I need to think about that. If that's going to be my goal in life, and that's what I'm pursuing, and that's going to be what I'm known for, you need to realize I will never be satisfied with just that. And this idea of pleasure, I buy things. That brings me pleasure. You'll never be satisfied with what you see. I will never be satisfied with what they see. We already learned that in Ecclesiastes. We won't want it more. And you start off with a 6-inch Subway, what are you going to be doing pretty soon? Until you see the calories. Oh, 6-inch, I know. We'll go foot long, and if you don't say 6-inch, you'll get a foot long. They're automatically going to give you that one. And so we want more and more. You start saying, well, we're going to serve, we're going to have hot dogs and chili, and we're going to have that to get people to come in. Well, what if we let off the hot dogs and chili? And they'll get tired of hot dogs and chili, and they like barbecue one night. You know, you're always going to have more and more if you go that route.
That's the law of diminishing return. The more we have it, the less we desire it.
Yeah.
Because
It doesn't mean much, does it? Okay, so I'm going to learn that. So second thing, what would I need to do? What did verse 12 help me see? What's verse 12? We got verse 10. Verse 11 says, when goods are increased, they're increased to them that eat them. That's the wise way to be looking at our goods. And what advantage is there for the owner thereof, say, beholding them? So we're looking at one who hoards his money, likes to look at it grow, not spend it. But he says, the sleep of a laboring man is sweet, whether he have little or much, but the fullness of the rich will not suffer them to sleep. And this will be our last. So what is that saying to us? Is that true? Is that something I need to hear? Because I have more and more. I got more and more properties. I got more and more things, and I'm not satisfied with silver. I want more and more things. What's going to happen? You got more and more things to do what? To worry about. Who's going to take? What squatter is going to be in that place that I haven't been there for 30 days? Who's going to come in there and take that over? I don't know, but it could happen. It could happen. And we get worried about all of us. Does that mean, well, you just need a pup tent and you're going to be happy in life? You probably want to do better. There's nothing wrong with that. But it's the idea that becomes our goal instead of our goal to serve God and listen to His wisdom, how we should enjoy the fruits of our labor and worship Him. And what He gives us, use it and rejoice and be thankful. We'll have to stop there. Lord willing, we'll continue the question number 7, 8, and then lesson 6 is there for you to pick up. Thank you very much. And we got to put some more of that number 6 there too. Any comments? Okay, thank you.